Power Project crew, welcome to today's show. We previously just had on Dr. Buttar, who, of course, got a lot of people, triggered a lot of emotions and a lot of backlash. We were just simply wanting to have the conversation and show a different point of view. You know, a lot of people say they don't trust mainstream media, but we bring on somebody not from your typical mainstream media, and it's like, whoa. Like, no, that's not what I meant. So we found somebody that is the perfect middle ground, someone who's level-headed, somebody who's not necessarily pushing an agenda, not saying that Dr. Buttar was. However, we have on today our buddy Daniel Orrego. Daniel was a part of the all-star team that helped build Quest Nutrition. He also is a part of Keto Pet Sanctuary, where they took a bunch of dogs with cancer, fed them, took care of them with the ketogenic diet. A lot of those dogs went into remission, and they did some amazing things. We talked about that a little bit on this episode, but mainly we just wanted to ask him, like, hey, is Dr. Buttar 100% full of it, or is there something there? And we think that that you guys will find a huge value in what he has to say about Dr. Buttar and his personal approach of taking in that information, thinking about it, putting it into his own research, and then formulating his own opinion on everything. We really, really want you guys to pay attention to this episode, because we feel that this is the absolute best approach that everybody, no matter who you are, this is what you should be doing when it comes to whatever you hear in the news and whatever you hear outside of the news. This guy, his approach is perfect. Really, really fast. If you guys haven't, please take advantage of markbellslingshot.com. Right now, we are offering 20% off any slingshot and hip circle combo. Our gym's super training gym just got shut down 100%. Not even employees can go in there. Offices are all shut down. So our one safe haven is no longer there. So we are... everybody at Super Training is now taking advantage of slingshots and hip circles for their home workouts. You guys can do the same thing too, and now you can do it for 20% less. So head over to markbellslingshot.com, add any hip circle, any slingshot, and you will receive 20% off that. And lastly, markbell.com is now Mark is now offering a free 30-day trial. Previously, it was 7 days. He wanted to go ahead and extend that. Hopefully, it'd be great if at the end of your free trial, we now have access to every single gym, and then you can realize, like, okay, this helped me a lot, so I'm going to keep going with it. That's our hope, at least. However, right now, there's a big emphasis on body weight workouts, slingshot workouts, hip circle workouts, home workouts, body weight, all that good stuff right now on markbell.com. So please take advantage of that. Head over to markbell.com, register, and you have access to the entire website for free for 30 days. Again, thank you guys for sticking with us. We know we got a lot of people upset with that previous episode. So please just, again, like I said, please pay attention to Daniel's approach on how he views things. And for now, enjoy the show.
I'm ready to rock. We have today's going to be an awesome show. We have my buddy Daniel Orrego on. I don't even know what his background is, but I never care about that, as I have never cared. That's never mattered a lot to me in terms of, learning bodybuilding or learning powerlifting. It's always been what does the person know, and I always take that at face value. And Daniel, I think, will help us with, yesterday's thing was pretty inflammatory. But anyway, we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, I got to talk about the New York strip that I cooked up last night. We cooked up some New York steak here at my beach house, and me and Jake were. I wish I could remember the name of the movie that we watched, because it was actually pretty good. It'll come to me in a second. But anyway, we cooked up some New York steaks, and he took a bite of it, and he was like, "What kind of steak is this?" I said, "That's a New York," because he really only likes filet. He's super picky. He just only likes filet. He loves the tenderness of a filet. I'm like, yeah, of course. But you like the most
filet.
Yeah, right. And sushi, So I'm screwed all the time. But he was like, oh, this one's pretty good. He never tries the other ones. That's always the problem, how kids can get with that kind of stuff. But anyway, we cooked up Piedmontese. We cooked up 2 big Piedmontese New York strips, and they were. As always, they were amazing. They were lean and they were tender.
Yeah, the thing I love about it, though, is because I'm really impatient. So it just cooks so fast. Like last night, 2 nights ago, out of New York, and I had it in the air fryer for 10 minutes. I didn't let it sit for 10. I let it sit for 5, and I ate that thing. And it was so fast. It was so good. So, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I think you're okay if you just do at least half the cooking time. But what's like scary about that? Yeah, in 10 minutes, that thing is fully cooked. And I bet you it was pretty like on the well side, right? It wasn't like too rare.
No, I had the air fryer on 365 for 10 minutes. It was like medium rare. So that's how I like my steaks anyway. I don't like it too well done.
Yeah, I know I've been clowning on the air fryer quite a bit, but that's because I was using inferior steaks back in the day. Now that I use Piedmontese, I'm like, okay, I get it. You know, I think I put it in there for 15 minutes, but at like 250 or something. And that thing came out insane. And this, of course, was a flat iron steak, which is my absolute favorite. I can't imagine myself like preferring something else other than that flat iron steak. For more information, for more amazingness, you guys really got to head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Make sure you check out the Jacked In Tan Pack and the Mark Bell's Power Project Deluxe Bundle. Code works on both of those. Seriously, that's some of our best, our favorite cuts and some of their best cuts. You get a ton of meat, like 18 different cuts. Really just second to none, the absolute best beef in the universe.
Nsima, the job that you accepted with Tony Huge, are you going to be moving to Thailand, or just doing it remotely?
I'm not going to beat my dick on camera in Thailand. I'm okay. I'll do that here in the U.S.
Yeah, you could be.
I got taxed. It's okay. I'll do that here.
Working from home.
Yeah, you're still social distancing. You're working remotely. Just blasting.
I don't know if you guys saw some of the stats that people were pulling up yesterday, because there was a lot of back and forth, obviously, with the comments from having Dr. Buttar on the show. I'm not sure if that's how you say his name, but it just looks like Butter to me, so I'm going to call it that.
I can't believe it's not butter.
Yeah, right. There were so many. There's so many comments going back and forth. There was negative. I saw some positive. I saw some people saying, hey, like, I think he has a decent point. And I think the whole point is, and I do realize what he said was very inflammatory, and at least to our knowledge, we can say with certainty, it does appear that people are dying from the coronavirus, because, you know, normally people aren't like rushed to the hospital, and they don't have this like 2 days that they go through this, you know, really tough time, and then they die. You know, this thing is pretty fast. It seems to be attacking people's respiratory system. So we don't necessarily, on this show, we don't necessarily share the same values and the same ideas and concepts of the doctor that we had on the show. We were just uncovering some information that he shared with us. But I did agree with a lot of the things he said. And I also am open to the fact that this thing could be man-made. I'm not going to take what he says and take that to the bank and try to go cash it in. But I do think that there was some merit to a lot of the things that he said, a lot of the data. So once you got past, you know, he does have like an entertainment value to him. He is sensationalizing and maybe exaggerating his points, but I think all of us are guilty of that. But what I wanted to point to is that somebody in the comment sections, and I don't have the information in front of me, but they basically said 78% of the people that are dying from the coronavirus have, I think it was like heart disease. And then there was X percentage had diabetes, X percentage had A, X percentage had B, X percentage had C. What I'm excited to talk to Daniel about is Daniel studies a lot of epidemiology. And that's basically just kind of he'll explain it. I'll let him explain it. But I think that having somebody like that on the show that can explain that this has been a long time coming, and this is it might be really rude and maybe impolite to say, but this is like payment, you know, like this is time to pay up, because we've been treating our bodies so poorly, and we've been treating our planet so poorly for so long. We've been so reckless for such a long time that there will be a price to pay. And I think that unfortunately this is the price that we're paying right here.
Yeah, it's the thing that I've just found so interesting after you posted what you posted is, I mean, I think you made sure to say that this is just a clip from the conversation, right? And that's kind of how the news works. The news will post a clip of something that's happened, and people will take that information that they got as this is the whole story. This is everything. They won't dig deeper. And the conversation, we dug deeper. We didn't necessarily agree with everything, but we had a conversation about it, got some different viewpoints about it. And it's just, it's so, I guess, it's so interesting how people will get so exactly into their emotions about it. There was an individual that we saw that was very emotional about the whole thing. I'm not going to name any names, but it's just like, can't people just have a conversation, have different opinions about the outcome and just talk about it? What's so wrong with talking about it? I found it so funny how people are like, shame on you for using your platform to give this person a voice. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I saw some of that.
Hey, we have a platform.
A platform? Thank you.
That got me excited. I was like, we got a platform.
Yeah. That's something that caught me way off guard. I had read one of the comments, and they said like, "Oh, this makes me so sad," and I'm like, I mean, sad though, like come on. Like I appreciate.
Don't be sad.
I appreciate that. Like you put that much weight into our podcast. Like we're all honored because of that. However, like man, I don't know if like, yeesh, like sad. That seems a bit much. Like this shouldn't make you sad.
My good sir.
Hey, there he is.
Look at this guy.
Oh my God. It's like the band is back together.
Yes.
This is incredible.
Hey, which verse am I supposed to sing?
Oh no.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, nothing but good times, fellas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great to have you on the show today. So it would be great if you can explain to some of these people so they get more familiar with you, some of your background, and what does your maybe we can kick things off by starting people out with understanding who you are a little bit, in the sense of what does your license plate say?
Right. Well, the history is so rich here. Mainly, I think it kind of all goes back to the occasion that you and I and your brother Chris had to meet. Was sort of within the Quest Nutrition ecosystem. And for people who are familiar with that history, most of them know about, protein bars. But the radar at Quest, what was really the most interesting thing about that epic was looking at the intersection of metabolism and disease as pertains to disease acquisition, primarily cancer, and the flip side of that coin, which is performance, right? How can you induce predictive effects on metabolism through nutrition pursuant to getting a better result on the field, getting a better result on the court, getting a better result on in the gym. And from there, lots of interesting things came out of that. Some of them were segues, the whole Quest training epic and our interest in MMA and boxing and combat sports was one. But more relevantly was the Keto Pet Sanctuary, which we founded, which helped dogs with cancer overcome and mitigate disease progression using nutritional interventions. Then more broadly, Epigenetics Foundation, which took those same principles and applied them in a brain cancer and breast cancer model. And now, most currently, BioShift Sciences, which looks at using novel markers to assess diseases at very, very early stages. And there's things that have come out of that since. A small nutrition company that focuses on performance chocolates. And more recently, these are things I haven't had a chance to share with you yet. I'm really looking at the intersection now of environmental sustainability and health and wellness, because those two topics really mesh and overlap. And big companies now like Walmart and Microsoft and Amazon are investing heavily in that space. So now that's sort of captured my imagination and interest, and that's what I'm pursuing now.
Cool. I think maybe we may have lost a little bit of your audio from your earbuds,
okay.
and now it's kind of like it's a little bit echoey. So maybe you can.
Okay, let me see if we can fix that. Let me go back to my my Bluetooth here.
But we were able to hear everything though. Yeah.
We could still hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
if Daniel freaks out and smashes his keyboard, this will make for some good clips here.
Right. Try again. Okay. It looks like we might be back where we want to be here.
Yes, we are.
Okay, very powerful. All right, let's continue, fellas. Let's continue.
All right, so I hit you up recently and just said, hey, who do you think would be some great guests on? Because there's really no topic that's on anyone's mind other than the coronavirus and how powerful it may be or may not be and stuff like that. And so you led me to some really great doctors and world-renowned people. And then one of the people that popped up was Dr. Buttar, who I had on the podcast about 2 days ago. And then that really, spiked a lot of people, triggered a lot of people. People got upset by some of the things that he was saying. So maybe you can clarify maybe some of the things that he was saying or some of your own points of view.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing that, Dr. Buttar does a phenomenal job at focusing people on issues which oftentimes they're not mysteries per se, but oftentimes they're outside the public consciousness, right? They're not part of the popular consciousness, I should say. And so I think he has a lot of success in getting people's attention arrested and focusing on something that they might not otherwise. In some instances, I don't think it's unfair to say that he challenges his own progression by adding in a lot of cofactors, right? I mean, there's quite a landscape that he covers, not just the COVID pieces, but he talks a lot about 5G. He talks a lot about corruption in the medical establishment, all valid topics, frankly, and all topics that warrant investigation and discussion. But sometimes it's like an avalanche, and it's difficult to kind of parse how each of these things are related. And so the great news is it gives you a lot to talk about, and we can get into that here today. I think one of the things that people need are resources, and Dr. Buttar definitely fits the bill when it comes to that. I think the other guy that has done really quite a good job in this domain as well is your friend and colleague, my friend and colleague, Dr. Peter Attia. He's done, I think, 3 podcasts in about as many weeks. One with Dr. Peter Hotez, another one with Ryan Holiday, and I believe the third one was with Dr. Mike Osterholm, that covers the COVID-19 landscape. Those podcasts are gold because they're a deep and rich well of information, and in particular on the epistemology of how we know what we know about COVID-19. So that's a great resource for people. Now, getting back to Dr. Buttar, here's the thing that I think he nails, which is he brings your attention to the metrics, the numbers, right? And what can we know, generally speaking, and then more specifically about COVID? Well, we know there's about, 3.3 million communicable deaths so far this year. To give that some context in terms of the impact that diseases have, there's about 2.1 million deaths by cancer so far this year. That's a lot, right? Now, currently we have just over 1 million cases of coronavirus. I think it's around the 1.2 million mark. And of those, we're almost at 70,000 deaths. And that's where the plot thickens, and we'll come back to that. One of the metrics that oftentimes doesn't get spoken to or is just acknowledged in passing is the number of recovered cases. And there's just over 250,000 of those. Right. So if you have somewhere in the order of close to 1 million active cases, not counting the deaths, then a quarter of those are currently recovered. That's very important because what it tells you is that, hey, of all the people who have been diagnosed that haven't died, right, a significant portion, 25% of those are already recovered. And so I think that's important. The place where the plot thickens is when assessing the deaths, right? Because what can we know? What can we know by just, logical inference? Well, I think it's close to 70% of deaths are in people over 80 and 50% of the deaths are in people over 70. So, without having a medical degree, without having a background in research sciences, you can know that by virtue of the age of that population, those guys are going to have comorbidities, obesity, diabetes, cognitive decline, neurodegenerative disease, cardiac disease, and cancer. So the question becomes, did those people actually die of coronavirus? And in infectiology, there's a standard for that. It's actually called the Koch standard. It was established by a guy named Dr. Robert Koch.
Rhymes with hoax.
Right. Yes, you may be onto something there. And basically what he said was, look, you have to distinguish between infection and disease. So a good example is like, Mark, if you get tested and I get tested and we both get flagged positive, you guys have coronavirus, you should quarantine yourself. Okay. But if we don't present symptoms, right? If we don't have a high temperature, if we don't have pulmonary compromise, right? Then do we have a disease, right? In other words, illness requires a clinical manifestation. And so this is very important when assessing the deaths, right? Have these 67,000 people actually died by COVID-19, right?
I understand. Like if someone has, they go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, you have like some tooth decay, but you're like, my tooth feels fine. You don't have, you're not, it's dis-ease, right? So it's, you don't have a problem. You have something that could potentially manifest into a problem later on, but it didn't turn into a problem at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so I think that's something that definitely warrants further investigation. And even the numbers themselves, and sometimes, if your main source of information is CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or maybe by extension, Facebook, one of the things that doesn't oftentimes get addressed is how you get the numbers. So a great example of this is a challenge that the CDC has had with some of the numbers coming out of Hubei province in China. And the reason is because they changed the standard by which they capture the diagnosis metrics. And here's what I mean by that. They changed from a lab standard to a clinical standard. Here's what that means. If a physician takes a chest x-ray and they see some fluid in the lungs, or they see some scarring in the lungs, or for example, they take an inflammatory blood panel and they say, oh, interleukin 6 is high, then they'll say that's COVID-19. There's been no laboratory test to confirm that. Now, those doctors could be right. But if they're tallying that without a lab test, they're basically counting something which may in fact not qualify as a COVID-19 diagnosis. And that's something that recently changed. And if you got 900,000 or so active cases and 15,000 of those are uncertain, in other words, were previously suspected to be coronavirus but unconfirmed, you might think, well, 900,000, 15,000. Yeah, but that's adding jitter into the data. And so these are the things that, the World Health Organization, the CDC, they're negotiating these things. They're trying to figure out, hey, look, do we put these in? What does this mean? Right? And so that shouldn't degrade anyone's confidence in the data set as a whole, but it should help people understand that, like, hey, when somebody says this many deaths, these aren't like, biblical revelations written in stone. These are working numbers that we should have a sufficiently high degree of confidence in, but they're not perfect.
Just on like average or like in comparison to last year, are there more deaths this year as opposed to last year or even the year before?
Oh yeah, by any standard of comparison, yes. But this is where the conversation, you're asking exactly the right questions. And this is where the conversation gets so interesting from a public health policy perspective, right? Because there are four variants of coronaviruses that are currently active in the population. They account for the world population. They account for somewhere between 10 and 20% of respiratory infections worldwide. And you've got somewhere in the order of 2.6 million people dying of respiratory infections worldwide. So this begs a very important question. And in fact, this was called out. I think I sent you this study, Mark, the one from, I think it was the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents, that looks at this comparison and asks the question, hey, look, either for these previous variants of COVID, right, of coronavirus, either we didn't have the right response for those, or the response for those was fine, and we're having perhaps not the correct response for this one, right? Now, of course, there's a third option. Well, hey, this one's different or more severe than the others. But the point is there are people that are actually, very good research scientists looking at and trying to answer these questions. And at least some clues to what the answer should be are in papers like that. And they're worth looking at. They're worth studying. Yeah.
I was curious about this also because one of the biggest things that Dr. Buttar said on that podcast that everyone got mad about was no one has died of COVID-19. But he was also just massively against quarantining. And one of the big reasons why, we're told to quarantine is because of the ability to infect others with this disease. It's highly communicable. But he was totally against that. So I'm curious to you, what are how do you feel about how the quarantine's being done right now and the reasons that we've been given to actually quarantine?
So here's the thing, and maybe by way of comparison, we can kind of vector towards a working answer, a working solution on this. And, embarrassingly, I think we have to go to South Korea to look at a good example of what an appropriate response to a disease like this should look like. And they focus in their efforts in the place that matters most, which is in testing people. They test about 20,000 people a day.
Yeah.
So, in other words, here's the difference. There's 4 of us on this podcast, right? Now, if we don't know which one of us has COVID and we say, well, we all need to quarantine ourselves, that doesn't really change anything. But if we're all tested and I'm the one that has it, now we know exactly what to do. I got to go in my own room and not come out. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. That constitutes effective quarantining. When you test everyone and you know who has it, and when you know who has it, like say, we're all in the same family together. If I get tested and I have it, all you guys get tested. Because if somebody else has it, now we know that with a high degree of confidence that I passed it to the next person. Okay, both of those people get quarantined, right? That constitutes effective quarantine. But without a test, the mass quarantine really doesn't change anything because you still have small groups of people that within those small groups, people are infecting each other.
Yeah, we've been quarantined and the numbers keep going up, right?
Yeah, and part of that is because we've been so slow in testing, when we do more tests, guess what? We're capturing the cases that were already out there. Had we done a whole bunch of testing in the beginning, the number would have shot up and then stayed constant. But because we've done incremental testing so poorly, it keeps going up. Why? Because, we're just capturing the cases that already exist. You see what I mean? Whereas South Korea had their baseline immediately because they were testing thousands and thousands of people concurrently. So, I think Dr. Buttar makes a similar point about autism, right? You go back 30 years, there weren't that many cases of autism. But then when we started focusing on it and testing for it, all of a sudden there were a lot of cases. Same thing with ADHD, things like that. No one had ADHD before. You were just a bad kid who didn't pay attention. Then would be able, right? That was me when I was in school. But then once they started testing for it, every kid had ADHD. Mm-hmm. Right? You got to look at that.
I think it's
is the answer to for people to start to look into getting tested?
Well, the answer is yes to that. And here's the challenge in this country. And I've sort of, poked at this. I've tried to get tested through my insurance, through my physician, and the answer was no. So the only real way to do it is to directly order a lab kit and do it yourself. That's where this goes. Because we've done so poorly in this country on getting the test kits and making them available, people can't test a la carte.
Do you know a reputable brand or reputable testing kit that you would maybe potentially recommend?
I will soon. This is an area of research, and there are different versions of the tests, and I'm still working out what each test means because they don't use the same standards of sensitivity and specificity. And probably the guy we should talk to about this is Dr. Attia. He would have probably a much more comprehensive answer than I have at this point, but I'm still digging into it because I'm still curious. I still want to get tested. And
there's multiple ways to get tested, right? You can get tested to see if you have it, and you can get tested to see if you maybe had it. Maybe you built up the antibodies. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah, that's accurate, and that's true for any viral disease. You can do a titer that says, hey, what kind of antibodies and what levels of antibodies are present in your system. And, that brings up the very interesting question of vaccines as relates to not just this, but any number of other communicable diseases. And there's a conversation to be had there about the dosing, the frequency, and the timing of vaccines. I think there's only a few people at the fringes who are categorically against herd immunity. Right, the idea that, hey, look, it makes sense in a population of people that we're all protected from one another when it comes to communicable diseases. That makes sense where we have vaccines. So I think there's very few people who would argue against that. I think the centrality of these conversations comes around, when should I get a vaccine, particularly as pertains to very small children, babies, young adults. What should that dosage be? And at what interval should I get it again? Okay, that's a meaty conversation. I think there's a lot to say there. I think very few people should say we shouldn't have, polio vaccine. Right. I don't think too many people are arguing that line. And I think when it comes to these coronaviruses, I think a true herd immunity is going to be tough to get, because these variants come around every so many years. It's tough to keep up with that. It's like getting a flu shot. You're getting a flu shot that addresses an iteration of the flu that's like 18 generations old. Could that help you? Conceivably. Can it predictively help you? That's very difficult to say yes to. Very difficult.
Since we were talking about vaccines so much yesterday, obviously Dr. Buttar is, we talked to him about it, and he's very against it in most cases. I wasn't able to necessarily get a clear answer on him from him on that. So, on that, like on the topic of vaccines, most people would, get their flu vaccine every single year, or have their children get a flu vaccine or typical vaccines like polio. Now, what are your viewpoints on that? Because he was like very against giving some children that, or even having them get it. Yeah. And when you hear that, especially when you like hear in the news, anti-vaxxers not giving their children vaccines and their children die of diseases that they shouldn't be dying of. Right. Give these kids a damn vaccine. So, can you help us out with that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. That I think goes back to, your responsibility as a citizen in the context of other people, right? So does it make sense for children to receive vaccines? Yeah. I think it's a steep hill to climb to say no categorically to that. Mm-hmm. Now, you get into the details of that, right? Well, when should they get it? Should they get it before 6 months? Should they get it before 2 years? There's a conversation to be had there. Why? Because, we know in very small humans, right, very young humans, that immune response takes some time to develop. So if you're jamming in a vaccine prior to that and then trying to goose that with other immune stimulants, you're getting into a chemistry that's not particularly predictive and perhaps could have some harmful side effects. In fact, there's some solid research that shows some of that. Not perfect research, but compelling research. So I think there's a conversation to be had there. Additionally, when it comes to revaccination, should you do it? Well, only in context to a titer test. This is actually something that comes up correspondingly in small animal veterinary medicine, right? Same thing. Should you be jamming all these vaccines into small dogs in doses that are designed for big dogs, right? Should you be revaccinating every 3 years without performing a titer? Because if they have the antibodies, why put more vaccine in there, mm-hmm. right? It's the same issue, just you've moved from humans to dogs and cats, right? So I think those are the places where it's important to have a robust conversation about what should be done. Is sort of in the, when should I do it? What should the dosage be? And at what interval should I revaccinate? Right. And this is coming from a person I've received, yellow fever, dengue fever. Why? Because I've traveled internationally to places where, I'm not going to go there without those vaccines. But if I was going to travel again to those places, I would take a titer test and ascertain, do I need to be revaccinated? Because if the answer is no, I won't do it. If the answer is yes, I will do it. Right. So I think it's establishing, really a lot of this is about establishing a standard of evidence that informs you what the choice should be, within a realm of reason.
Yeah, Dr. Buttar was very much not worried at all about the coronavirus. Are you concerned about it? Like, are you doing anything to prevent contracting it or anything like that?
You're just like nailing these. This is like precision strike inquiries. And funnily and interestingly, I think the guy who's maintained a very consistent perspective on this is Bill Maher. I don't know if you ever watch Real Time with Bill Maher, but he consistently advocates for two things for his audience, but more generally, he makes the point that one of the challenges to healthcare in this country, and you take away the challenges with insurance, you take away the challenges with Medicare, is he says, look, individuals need to do three things for themselves. Immaterial of whether they're insured or not, immaterial of whether they're going to a hospital or healthcare system that provides good medicine. They need to sleep, they need to eat well, and they need to exercise. And, that I think resonates very well with the four of us. Why? We're like, manic about these three things. Am I recovering? Am I getting restful sleep? Is my nutrition on point? And what am I doing to enhance my performance, right? Those things are manifestly part of our everyday lives, right? We talk about them and we participate in those things ad nauseum. But it can't be overstated the effects that those three things have on, most importantly, longevity, how long we're gonna live, but secondarily on immune function. And so one of the things I've been doing, since I can't get the coronavirus test, is I've been doing an immune panel, IgG, IgA, IgM, and an inflammatory panel, homocysteine, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, galactin-3, and interleukin-6, to see how my immune system is functioning and what my levels of inflammation are in my body. So I've been running those about once a month. And the great news is, you can do that a la carte at Quest Diagnostics. It's relatively cheap, and that gives you an oblique view into what your immune system performance is. So is my state of worry zero about obtaining coronavirus? No. But do I have a sufficiently high level of confidence that that's not going to be a primary worry for myself? Yeah. I'm doing what it takes to be as healthy as I can. And the great news is anyone can do that. Anyone can access that.
Do you think the coronavirus is man-made?
Well, we have some understanding that it is through looking at patents, because in the research on this is pretty well known. In fact, Dr. Buttar has done a good job of elucidating the progression of research for that, as have several doctors from Germany. So when people say, "Hey, that all came from bats," yes, it's correct to observe that there's a version of COVID-19 that's in bats. But the reality is that version of the virus couldn't make its way into human cells. So there was some tinkering with that to produce that effect. And we know that there's several different patents on different aspects of COVID-19. I think Google owns one, and there's a couple other companies. I think Dr. Buttar brought up the case that Bill Gates owned one. That's not. It is correct to say that I think it's one of his subsidiary companies, or a company that one of his holding companies has an investment in. That company owns the patent, but suffice to say that these are things that corporations want to own, and with good reason, right? There is money to be made on owning those things, particularly from a patent troll perspective, right? So, is that entirely nefarious? I think you have to make the case that it is, but the optics definitely aren't good on something like that. That's for sure.
Do you believe in any conspiracy theories or anything? Do you think this is like an economic reset button or anything like that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the theory that this will be an economic reset button is entirely cogent. If there's a conspiracy associated with that, I think we have to establish that. right? But I mean, this is already resetting the economy. I mean, if you look at what Saudi Aramco has done recently to try to re-stimulate the petrol market, if you look at, the real economy outside of conveyance, ergo trucking and healthcare, I mean, it should have been absolutely frozen. And without this stimulus package, and I think there's going to be subsequent stimulus packages, it is a reset. There's just no two ways about it. I mean, you look at what Treasury has done, and you look what the markets have done. I mean, we're seeing movements not seen since like the last Great Depression. I mean, so yeah. I mean, now whether there's mustache twisting guys in a smoke-filled room designing all this, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I think we'd have to see that.
I know that you're very much into playing around with finances and stuff. I think it's another hobby of yours. Have you taken any precaution, or like what are some things that maybe people can do or should look into? I know you're into like cryptocurrency and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to recommend crypto because it's so volatile. So like as an investment vehicle, it's hard to say, yeah, crypto. But to me, cryptocurrency is interesting in terms of having a currency that's not attached to a state actor. So to me, it's interesting in that regard. Ultimately, what will its role be in a larger economy? It's tough to see. Right now, it's sort of been a very useful form of exchange for quote unquote off the books transactions, and I don't suggest that all of those are illegal. Some of them are, and many of them are, but many of them are for legitimate private transactions for very legitimate enterprises. Beyond that, I mentioned earlier that I've taken a great interest in the intersection between environmental sustainability and health and wellness. One of the things that I've noticed is, despite this economic freezing, the green tech sector, while certain aspects of it have been hit when it comes to like the manufacturing side, investment in green companies hasn't dropped. And those market positions haven't taken major hits. And I've seen that in the various, portfolios that I look at. And that is very interesting to me, because I think what that indicates, and perhaps what it indicates, it's hard to be authoritative on these things, is that there's a recognition that there's really only one game left to play, one true meta game, which is the survival of the species game, right? I think you did a great job articulating this in the last podcast, Mark, which is, look, it doesn't matter what your political persuasion is. I think everyone at some level can recognize, look, there's a lot of humans crawling around on this planet. There's about 8 billion of us. We generate a lot of trash. We burn a lot of stuff. We build a lot of things. That's having an impact which may not be reversible unless we really and truly do something about it. And, prior to this event, if you looked at what the hedge funds were doing, they're all going in this direction, right? They're all slowly abandoning legacy fuels, that essentially the petrol carbon industry, and moving towards green tech. Why? That's where the jobs are. That's where the growth is, and that's where the innovation is, right? So I think that tells us something that's instructive, And the truth is like, hey man, if you live in Florida, there's going to be, you already know that there's water in your house, way more than you wanted because of sea level rise. Like they don't have to be on the green bandwagon to know that something needs to be done about that. Right.
Yeah.
So I think in that respect, that's it, that it doesn't matter what your political persuasion is. It doesn't matter who you vote for. I think we all recognize, hey, look, we probably need to do something about this and sort of, quickly.
Dr. Buttar kind of scared the crap out of us with the whole 5G thing. Should we be concerned about like the megahertz or gigahertz or whatever that'll be floating through the air once they turn on 5G?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a legitimate concern, and that concern comes from looking at the research, right? Now, you have to understand the research. It's just like anything. When you're doing in vitro research, which means you're essentially doing cell cultures on a petri dish, or you're doing murine model research, which means you're working with little mice or little rats, right? That's a first order understanding of what could possibly be going on with humans. You got to do that part of it. You got to get those, preliminary insights. But does that mean, we're all going to have brain cancer because of 5G? We don't have a causal connection to that yet. We have a correlation, and that correlation is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But can we say with authority, look, it's, now, like, for example, there are things in life that we know. Hey, man, if you consistently smoke cigarettes, the likelihood that you're going to get lung cancer is astronomically high. But we just, no one's fighting against that position, right? Do we have
except for Ron Penn.
Right. So, but Ron, he has a strategy, right? You smoke one cigarette every 17 and a half days for its hormetic effects, right? So he's got a strategy there, right? He's not a pack a day guy. He's a one cigarette every 17 and a half day guy. But yeah, I think we have to allow the research to happen. And I think what's important is that the scientists are being responsible about that. And they're saying, hey, look, governments, large corporations, let's put a hold or a limit on the deployment of 5G so we can get an understanding. And then if we figure out, hey, this stuff is bad, but there's things we can do about it, or it's not as bad as we thought, as long as we're careful, okay, then proceed with deploying your technology. Now, of course, that causes a conflict with large corporations who are like, hey, I spent $1 billion on developing this. I got to get this money back to my shareholders. I got to get this thing out the door. There's definitely a tension there for sure. But hopefully, in a rational society, in a democratic society, we allow the science to instruct us as to what public policy should be.
I like what you were saying when you were talking about the intersection of health and wellness and the environment. And it reminds me of something that you studied a lot, which is epigenetics. And it seems like the planet itself has its own epigenetics as well. Like the things that we've been doing for a long time, they're starting to really cost us, the recklessness maybe that we've had in the past, and our desire to always want things so fast, maybe the 5G and maybe the fuel and maybe the different things that we've done to ourselves and for ourselves, for our advancement. And we were just always looking at, being better and moving faster and getting things done in more of a economic way, the most efficient way, the fastest way. And maybe there's a price to pay for all that. And maybe what we're seeing is, in epigenetics, we know that we can pass things on, and you can pass things on for a while. And I think that we're starting to kind of see that, maybe the things that were done in the 30s and 40s and 50s, like, it's starting to make sense now. It's starting to, what our parents did, the genetics they passed on to us. I would say our parents, at my age, I would say our parents were probably some of the most unhealthy people to ever walk the face of the earth here in the United States. And I'm not saying they're to blame for it. There's a cascade of so many different things that happened and went on. And they just didn't have the education and knowledge either about the different foods, and candy was becoming more popular, and ice cream and refrigeration and freezers and so on. And then we started stocking our houses, our homes with all these delicious foods. And people were making a lot of money and people were getting ahead. But now we have these compromised immune systems because we have endless bags of Doritos in our pantry. And so I like what you were saying about that intersection of health and wellness along with the health and wellness of the earth. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, what you're talking about, large corporations are already taking on. So, for example, in fact, people always mention Walmart under their breath, but large corporations can do nefarious things and good things concurrently, simultaneously, right? And so one of the things that they've done, which I think has established something very material in terms of what corporate governance, corporate behavior, being a good corporate citizen should look like, is they've instituted what's called a PSP, or personal sustainability program, which asks of the employee to do something that impacts the environment or impacts their own personal health and wellness. So, for example, and this, it makes a lot of good business sense. And the story that they trot out, which is pretty charming, is there was a plant manager that ran several of the Walmarts within a region. And what he did, in I think it was like half a dozen stores that he supervised, he went around and turned the lights off inside of the Coke machines. There's in the Coke machine, there's like a light that backlights you. Now, with the light off, you can still see there's Sprite, there's Coke, there's Dr. Pepper. But he did this, this is many, many machines across all these stores. And it ended up saving $800,000 in electricity over the course of a year. And then, of course, other plant managers recognize, we'll do this too. So that was a great example of something very small, but very, very modest, that had a huge impact, both economically and environmentally. And of course, if you've got Walmart employees that are going to the gym, they're taking Pilates, that probably are eating less of the food from Walmart, right? That means less sick days.
Except the Quest Pizza.
Less insurance. Right, except the Quest Pizza or the Quest cookies. That's great. That makes great economic sense for Walmart. So I think those are some great examples of what you're talking about that are already implemented and active today. And the other piece to what you said is very interesting, because what you're speaking to is what are called in formal economics externalities, right? So I'll give you an example. If you have a car and I want to buy a car, right? You have the supply, I have the demand. And you say, well, my price is X for the car. And then I say, well, but this is what I want to pay. And then we come to an agreement. I pay you money for the car. You give me the car. That is considered good for the economy. What's the externality in that model? Well, the thing that we didn't count, the thing that the input that we didn't recognize is that you had to go dig up the earth to get the metal to make the car, right? You had to go poke holes in the earth to get the gasoline to fuel the car. Then when I drive the car, I'm spewing that exhaust everywhere, right? But we're not counting those economic impacts. We're not counting those environmental impacts, and we're not counting those health impacts. Why? Because if we did, then the cost of that car isn't $30,000, it's $33 million. You see what I mean? And so, and this is the same thing in the health and wellness space, right? I mean, I'll use myself an example. I love Lucky Charms. I mean, I love eating bowls of Lucky Charms. This is a favorite pastime of mine. But the reason I don't do that is because I recognize, hey, if I do that, there are anticipated consequences for that, right? But you see what the externality is there quite clearly. The regular shopper goes to Walmart, they buy the Lucky Charms and they eat them. That's considered a good economic transaction. But the payment for that is on the healthcare side, right? You see what I mean? And that's a societal cost, right? That's a greater cost to the individual. They're paying more to get those Lucky Charms.
I'm thinking about what it would be like to be inside your brain for a day. Like for me, it would be like, don't eat the Lucky Charms, you fat bastard. And
dude, it's a constant struggle, my friend. It's a constant struggle. The struggle is real, baby.
A lot of big words in there too.
Real quick, what are some companies that people should maybe be paying attention to in terms of what you're talking about right now?
Well, I think it's all the big ones, right? And what I mean by that is, look, there's all kinds of small, innovative companies out there that are doing interesting things and bringing interesting things to bear. But the net impact that they have is small. But if you're focusing on an Amazon and a Microsoft and an Oracle, and an Apple and a Walmart and a Target, right? If you're looking at these big properties, what they do has the biggest impact, so it's the most important. And mostly the focus is, what are they not doing, right? So in environmental affairs, assessing carbon footprint is done on what's called a scope basis. You have scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, right? So scope 1 is all the things that you do to create a carbon footprint, right? The operation of your business, everything that you do. Scope 2 is the energy you buy to do that. Are you buying it from a coal-fired plant? Are you buying it from a natural gas plant? Are you buying it from a solar panel, right? But scope 3 is the most important one. And what that is that's your whole supply chain, where you get raw materials, where you get products. What is their carbon footprint? And usually for any given company, the vast percentage majority of their carbon footprint comes from scope 3. It comes from their supply chain, right? So even if a Target store has solar panels so that the store gets its energy in an environmentally sustainable way, even if they use more efficient cooling systems to cool the store, right? Even if they're buying their power from a solar array somewhere in Southern California, right? Even if they have all those things very green, if they're getting their products trucked in from from the East Coast to get to the West Coast, their carbon footprint just went up, right? If their executives are flying internationally all the time, their carbon footprint just went up. You see what I mean? So it's that downline, it's that supply chain, it's that piece of your business that interacts with other businesses. That usually accounts for the biggest carbon footprint. And, to any given company, they might say, well, we don't control that. Yeah, you don't. But you can have a conversation about it. And you can tell your suppliers, hey, we're going to try to increase our standards a little bit. Can you work with us? Can you make your processes more efficient so our total footprint net from a carbon perspective actually goes down, right? These are the things that, if you and I started a business today, we would think about these things and we try to implement them. But we have the advantage of knowing about them from the start. The question becomes is, can these large organizations make that adjustment and where it really counts? Why? Because they're already massive, right? And that's where I think the conversation gets so interesting. How do you compel these big organizations to make those moves? It's not easy. It's not easy to incentivize them.
Yeah. Are you aware of how things are looking for China at the moment? Like, it seems like they have gone back to work and things like that. I don't know if they've opened up the whole country, but you have any information on that?
Well, they've done sort of what's ended up happening in Florida, which they've done their quarantining on a province by province basis, and really on a township by township basis. In the major metro areas, nothing's really stopped. Why? Because the government just can't control it. In the provinces where they're a little bit more rural and there's a lower population, actually their quarantining has been pretty darn effective. Why? Because they send the military and they say, you're all quarantined. Okay. Right. So it's on a region by region basis. And then, of course, we now know from a recently leaked intelligence report that they've been underreporting the numbers. But here's the reality. Both them and Russia, you can almost predict that they'll do that, right? Now, that hurts our ability to understand the totality of the situation. But the fact that we're finding out about these things, and with some of the things that they just disclose voluntarily, like what I mentioned before, using a clinical diagnosis instead of a lab diagnosis, well, okay, that skews the numbers, man, right? So as long as we're getting this information and making the necessary corrections, you start to get a better picture of what's going on. But in comparison to the United States, China, Iran, South Korea, France, Italy have all done a better job in running tests than us. That's why they know more. That's why they've been able to quarantine more effectively than we have.
Have you had an opportunity to run an analysis of Tiger King yet?
No, I haven't. But dude, let me tell you something, man. This guy has provided so much entertainment in a time where people really need it. So I feel like, that thing has been a win for everyone, whether you like it or not. I think it's just been an overwhelming success because holy Toledo, man, there's such a vicarious satisfaction from watching that guy. Cause you're like, no matter what the state of affairs is in my life, I am doing better. I can feel good about myself in comparison to this guy, man.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? Before we continue, I don't mean to go back too much, but on the vaccine topic, it was mentioned yesterday, or he said, when the corona vaccine comes out, whether it's a year from now or whatever, I'm not gonna get the vaccine. Do you have any discomfort thinking about a corona vaccine, or that's not even something you're remotely concerned about?
Well, I mean, my guess, and obviously I don't want to speak for Dr. Buttar, is my guess is that his line of reasoning on that is sort of like the vaccine for the flu vaccine, right? Which is he's probably looking at the fact that whatever generation, whatever version of the disease that vaccine is addressing will never be the current version. So the value of getting it is sort of nominal at best.
And he was also like linking it to 5G from the side too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, to establish that correlation isn't crazy, right? To say, hey, look, there's a cofactor in the environment that's affecting immune function, and that could have something to do with disease acquisition. That's not crazy. In fact, that's one of the things that was, I believe it was reported by CNN, that in Wuhan province and they had these incinerators, which were putting so many carcinogens in the air that people were sick anyways. And then you throw this coronavirus on top of that, now you got a real problem, right? So that level of inference between those two things, you've made a pretty solid case for trying to establish, how those cofactors can interact in that way. The next step though is to move from correlation to a causal condition, and you need compelling research to do that. Right now, that doesn't mean that you can't take action when you know about correlation. But the big thing that comes out of that is, look, if you have a weak inference between two things, what's your public policy? Right? What do you actually, for a person who's in a position of responsibility instructing other people, what do you tell them? Now, as an individual like him running a practice, he has a huge degree of latitude to say and recommend whatever he wants. But if you're a public health official, can you do the same thing? And you got to weigh that. Right? It's a different context, right? You and I can talk and we can say, this is what I'm doing. Yeah, this is what I'm doing. Okay. But we're not telling a population of people, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
Right? Therein lies the difference, Yeah.
What are you and the wifey up to? You guys, sitting around watching some Netflix. You guys able to exercise? What you guys been doing with yourselves?
So I mean, you mentioned exercise, right? So what's changed? Well, there's no more Gold's Gym, right? I can't go to Venice. I can't train at the Mecca. So it's been a lot of band work, and a lot of going up and down stairs. There's various stairs, and that's been sort of my cardio and my resistance training, and I actually like it. It's not hard for me to get motivated. I mean, here in LA, it's 70 and sunny most days, so I very rarely have an excuse not to go outside. But I will say this. I've exhausted the movie supply on iTunes. There's nothing. If you guys have recommendations, I will take them, because I'm just now I don't even watch movies. I just seen it. I'm just always revealing what I've already seen. So
I saw a pretty good movie. Good movie last night. I think it was called In the Name of Self-Defense, I think is what it's called. It's like a karate. It's a karate movie. It's definitely a little bizarre, but it's very good. It was fun to watch.
Good times. Okay, I'll add that to the.
And you'll dig it because you like martial arts.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay,
also,
I like that.
Check out The Outsiders. I finished it. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's Mark mentioned it. It's a Stephen King thing. It's on HBO. Don't know if you got it, but it's pretty amazing. So yeah, there's another suggestion.
Bravo. All right. That helps me immeasurably. I assure you.
I think the economic crisis is surrounded by everyone paying so much money for all their streaming services, their cable, and all the different shit that, I mean, your bill to watch TV nowadays could be absolutely insane if you have Hulu and all this HBO Go and Amazon Prime, and you start adding it all up, right?
Yeah. It's so funny. People's like, I cut my satellite, or I don't have cable. Yeah, but your cost didn't go down, man.
It went through the roof because you're paying $9.99 for 20 different things.
Yeah.
You know what? I do want to ask you this because I'm curious about your point of view. We did the whole interview with Dr. Buttar, and you look at the comments on Mark's post, look at some of the comments on YouTube, and people are enraged. They're so mad that you're even willing to have a conversation with someone with this type of viewpoint. But as we were all talking, even though his viewpoint is different, Some may look at it as absolutely just ridiculous and false and potential misinformation. Mm-hmm. I still think it's very valuable to just have the conversation with the individual, despite him potentially having different viewpoints. For the listeners, how would you suggest that they change their form of thinking when listening to someone who has massively different viewpoints for them? Because I feel like there's a lot of emotions that get riled up when people are like, I can't believe he said that. I can't believe he views that. But there shouldn't be a problem with listening to it and thinking a little bit.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And, in the world of social media and in podcasting, a little bit of that is like, welcome to the party, right? You guys all know Joe Rogan. I mean, good God, the amount of abuse that he takes on his channels is just unbelievable. Precisely for what you're suggesting is, why did you even have that guy on, right? And I think to some degree, you can put that type of sort of perpetual outrage in its own bucket, right? And to your point, look, I don't think it's unfair to say that to a degree, Dr. Buttar is a little bit sensationalistic, right? I don't think it's unfair to offer that. And in fact, I think he would probably concede that point. Why? Because he wants to bring attention to the things that he's advocating for. And if he does so with a little panache and a little zest, he'll say, yeah, I'm about that. But at the end of the day, it's incumbent upon everyone, you, me, everyone who listens to him, to evaluate the merit of what he's proposing. Is there data? Is there research? Is he bringing evidence to bear to support his claims, right? In other words, if he makes a claim, does he have a warrant for that claim? Does he provide explanatory depth? Does he provide research references, right? And if the answer is yes to those things, then immaterial of sort of, how he festoons his presentation with inflammatory statements, if the underlying content is substantive, okay, you got to evaluate, you got to weigh it out, right? And I think that what you're suggesting is important just as a general practice, but particularly in instances like this when there is so much emotion, right? How do I take my emotion, acknowledge it, everyone's emotions are legitimate. Let me just set it over here for a second and use my prefrontal cortex and my powers of analysis to truly evaluate what's going on and try to understand, hey, is there some meat on the bone here? Is this legit? Is this for real? Or can I safely discard it because there's not much there? Right.
I think that's
I'm sure that you've... Go ahead, Andrew.
No, because one of the reoccurring comments that I would see is man, I don't really trust mainstream media, but this guy is crazy. So it's like, well, okay, well, which is it? I feel like, I don't know, you almost can't have both. You can't necessarily disagree with mainstream media and then we bring somebody on that's not mainstream media and then disagree with them too. However, what you just said, I think corrects all of that. Just take the information and just be smart about it. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that answered all of those questions perfectly.
Well, and I'll tell you, maybe to add a little bit of color and context to that, right? I think a part of that evaluation comes from trying to understand what someone's agenda might be and what their motivation might be, right? So, for example, like you say, mainstream media. Well, what could possibly be the agenda of mainstream media? Well, you can kind of know something about that, right? Like NBC is owned by General Electric. So could the agenda of NBC be anything other than the interests of General Electric? I mean, maybe at the margins, maybe a little bit over here, there might be a diversion. But centrally, what are their motivations? What are their agenda? Whatever the hell GE says they are, right? And it's the same thing for anybody else, myself included, right? What's my agenda? Well, I'm curious about certain things. I'm interested in certain things. I want to have conversations and talk about those things and pursue them. So that's my agenda. Right? What's Dr. Buttar's agenda? Well, he has a practice. He has an ecosystem. He's trying to sell that ecosystem. Does that make him nefarious? No. But you can know that there's some form of institutional bias that goes along with that. And provided that exists at an acceptable degree for any given viewer or audience member, then okay, you can take on what he says. If it's not acceptable, you might reject it. Right? But that's the criteria of analysis for something like that, how you might evaluate it. Where is this person coming from or this institution coming from and why? Once you can kind of know something about that, you can say, okay, well, I'll take on X percentage of what they're suggesting, right? It doesn't mean NBC has no value in what they say, but you might take certain things with a grain of salt, ultimately understanding what the ownership structure of that corporation is. That's all.
I think when you guys started the Keto Pet Sanctuary, a lot of people probably thought you guys were crazy. And you guys are all dog lovers too, but I would imagine that people that love dogs are like, you can't do this. They're not supposed to eat that way. They're supposed to have their treats. They're supposed to have this and that. And so they probably thought you guys were crazy, and they thought the research was crazy until you're able to put together some data that showed otherwise.
Well, you're not wrong about that. And that was something that I had to deal with on a daily basis before we had the data. And one of the ways I managed that was by being open and inclusive and transparent. And I'll give you specific examples. Like I would have, almost a near weekly basis, safety officers from the various rescue agencies, the various kennels, come out to the facility. They'd always come out with, arms folded. And what would I do? I'd have them interact with all the dogs. I would have them meet the staff. And then I would take them upstairs to the office and walk them through each case. And once they saw the data, and once they saw the level of veterinary care, and once they saw things they had never seen before, like advanced PET CT imaging on dogs, advanced blood panels on dogs, once they saw the meticulous nature of the data collection and what we were pursuing, and they saw the health of the animals, then the conversation turned from I'm suspicious and you guys are up to no good to, you know what, this is really interesting. And, my aunt has breast cancer. What do you think she should do? And right, it shifted their perspective because of the transparency, because of the inclusiveness, because of the openness. And that, even after all that, it didn't mean that they agreed with what we were doing, but what they understood was a couple of things that were very important. One is we certainly weren't hurting dogs. We were, in fact, helping dogs enormously, and they could evaluate that for themselves. And secondly, even though they might think like, I'm not sure if this is a legitimate pursuit, what they understood is that our intention to produce a good outcome was very high, and there was nothing that we were doing that was harming the animals. And so once they saw that, it was a complete change in attitude. And then finally, once we did have some data that showed, hey, there's really something compelling here, and we can demonstrate that to a pretty rigorous degree of confidence, then more and more people started saying, wow, there might really be something to this.
For people,
so a lot of it is the process, right?
For people that don't know, what was the Keto Pet Sanctuary? I know you guys had a lot of success with it. It was unprecedented too.
Yeah, so really where that started was, it goes back to that whole intersection of metabolism and disease, and looking at the work of Dr. Thomas Seyfried, Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, all guys who saw that, cancer is primarily a disease of metabolism, right? And this wasn't a new idea. They were taking this from Otto Warburg, who gained this understanding back in the 1920s. And, there were some people after him, Peterson, a few other doctors, who sort of advanced this idea. But what they did was they looked at this very carefully in two models, a rat model and in a human brain cancer model. And what they saw was that using nutrition as an intervention against disease progression could be very, very effective, particularly if you're using nutrition in the form of a ketogenic meal program. So we didn't really innovate at all. All we did was we said, look, let's take those same principles that have worked compellingly in a brain cancer model and in various tumor models in rats and apply them to dogs. And the reason we had a high level of confidence that this would work is we had some case studies that other people had worked on prior to Keto Pet Sanctuary that we could see like, hey, there's something to it. And additionally, we knew fundamentally, look, the last 200,000 years of canine evolution have been such that dogs mainly are in states of ketosis throughout their lives in the wild. Why? Because they don't get food every day. So we knew in an anticipatory fashion that we wouldn't harm the dogs. And secondly, we also knew that the modern high glycemic, high sugar, high carbohydrate kibble diet was something that was not part of the evolutionary history of canines. That's the last 100 years, right? It's only in the last 100 years that dogs have been able to eat essentially extruded high heat sugar pellets. Like, that's a new phenomenon in canine evolution, right? So we knew that by removing that insult, there was a very good opportunity to address disease in a way that could not only slow it down, but in some cases reverse it. And that was really the point of departure for pursuing that.
So what were the puppers eating then? Like, was it just like literally a traditional ketogenic diet?
Yeah, the only difference between what they ate and what you or I would eat was that the food was unheated. There was no heat process. It was fresh or raw.
Got it. And
that was really the only difference.
Yeah, in your opinion, should all dogs eat that way with or without cancer? Like, just to be a healthier dog, should they eat that way?
Well, not necessarily, but I mean, I think it's sort of like, the Lucky Charms example. Every once in a while, have some Lucky Charms, right? But if that is the predominant form of nutrition, problems ensue, baby, right? So it's really that, which is, look, there's such a massive difference between a fresh food nutritional program and anything that's a kibble-based or rendered-based nutritional program. So if you take away feeding your dog something that comes in a bag and you move towards, hey, I'm going to feed that dog something that I get fresh from the butcher or something I get fresh from the grocery store. I don't need to heat process it because, for the last 100,000 years, dogs have not eaten heat processed things. Okay, you're tracking towards what a dog's nutrition would look like in the wild, right? It doesn't mean that has to be perfect or the same every day or anything like that. Now in the case of disease or disease prevention, yeah, looking at a ketogenic diet could have some value for sure.
So you can give a dog like a raw steak and they'll be okay?
Well, I mean, if a dog was in the wild, all they would get is a raw steak. Or because, dogs are scavenging carnivores, a lot of times they get a fermented steak. In other words, they're eating something, they're gnawing on something that's been dead for 10 days, right? But, they've got a concentration of 10% hydrochloric acid in their stomach. Like, they're built to deal with that, right? They can do.
And you're built to eat some Lucky Charms. Works out pretty good.
Yeah, sadly, this is my cross to bear, my friend.
Man, I was just going to jokingly say, like, I've been doing so good because Lucky Charms is my jam too. All cereals, really. I'm not biased.
I know.
They're not in the house. We're definitely not going to deal with social distancing and all this, mess to just go grab another box of cereal. However, my father-in-law dropped off a care package, and in that care package was a big old box of Lucky Charms. So I'm like, oh man.
He knew.
Like, I was doing so good. Well, not today. So I indulged. It was so good.
Can you guys explain what's so good about Lucky Charms? Because honestly, I've never had them, and whenever I see the box, I've just never really been.
Good sir.
They're magically delicious.
They are. See, you stole the line right now. They've got purple hearts and pink stars, my friend. I mean, there's a lot going on in a bowl of Lucky Charms, man.
Yeah, you're better off.
Explains it all.
Yeah, you're better off not even giving it a go. But your Raisin Bran Crunch that you like.
Yes.
Okay, imagine that times, I don't know, 1 million.
I highly doubt that.
They're that good, dude.
Raisin Bran? What are you, 100 years old?
That's what I'm saying.
Raisin Bran Crunch.
It doesn't matter.
Raisin Bran Crunch. They have the little gobbles of clusters of granola in there. It's beautiful.
Ooh, watch out, granola.
Daniel, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate having you on the show here today.
Oh, this is great stuff, man. I'm so glad we could do this, guys. Like I said, the band is back together. This is good times.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. It'll be great to once this all of this is all over with, we can go down to Venice and get in some lifting too.
Oh, without question, man. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, man.
All right, man. Catch you later. Have a good rest of your day.
See you later, sir.
All right. Take care, everyone.
See ya. Peace. Love that guy.
He's awesome.
I think we all just got a little smarter.
Honestly, man, I'm just I really hope people listen to this episode too, because the note where he was just helping people understand how to think, you know what I mean? Just how to take in some information, evaluate it, look at like what his intentions are, where he's coming from. Just listen. I think people just need to understand that, and not be so closed off to just taking a listen.
Yeah, what I love is like nobody can really say anything bad about anything he said in his approach. You know, like when it comes to like, I don't do the mainstream media, but I'm not listening to this guy with his radical agenda or whatever. It's like, okay, this guy's right in my opinion, right in the middle where everyone should be. Take all the information and do your own research if you choose to. It's not religion. It's not like, you know, it's because he believes this, it doesn't mean like that's his makeup now. Like that's like who he is. He's just like, no, I'm looking at the data and yeah, I'm not really worried about it, but I'm not saying I'm worry free about the virus, which is huge.
Yeah, we're going to have to get after Peter Itea. We'll have to make that happen. You know, something Daniel said in the beginning of the show, which I thought was it was really great. You know, he was talking about this pandemic that's going on, and he just said, like, what can we know about it? I think that's a great question to ask whenever you're diving into anything. Whenever you're going to dive into an exercise program, a nutrition program, you want to start to learn about finances. You want to start to learn about mortgages, like anything that you want to ever learn about. I think that's a great place to start. Like, what can I know? Like, what could I learn on this topic? And I think that's exactly what you want to try to do with this COVID-19 thing that's going on, is you want to try to figure out and then I think it's also, as soon as you say like, what can I know? I think you have to also make sure that you're not allowing your feelings to get in the way, because they could be to your detriment. And then the other thing that he said was that he felt that Dr. Buttar sometimes Daniel says an amazing way with words. He said sometimes he challenges his own progression. I wrote it down because I'm like, holy shit, that's really powerful. He challenges his own progression. And a lot of us probably do that. As we're racing towards one thing, we're probably, screwing up in other areas and maybe potentially hurting ourselves, just like with overtraining, or just like somebody that, wants to be lean and big and strong kind of all at the same time. It's like, well, that's a lot of stuff to be chasing after. Maybe you're challenging your own progression. And maybe you should just be trying to enhance your own progression as much as you possibly can and optimizing it, rather than having things that are weighing you down or slowing you down.
Yeah, oddly enough, probably can say the same thing about the 5G and wanting to go faster, right? It's challenging a lot of other things, which is crazy.
Right, right.
But in a slight defense of that statement, challenging his own progression, I think he knows that he is, and he just honestly doesn't mind. Because, there's certain ways that I feel he could have put his idea forward that maybe wouldn't sound as crazy or as wild, that more people would maybe pick up on or be okay with hearing. But he just chose not to do that. He chose to just put his point forward and let you take it. And yes, that does turn a lot of people off, but frankly, he doesn't care. And I do respect that. I respect that a lot.
It's also getting it's getting a lot of attention by challenging his own progression, by him being so aggressive. It's Andrew and I got on the phone yesterday for a minute, and I just mentioned Colin Kaepernick. It's like so many people are like, oh, he's a disgrace. I can't believe he used the NFL platform to do that, and he could have done it in a different way. And it's like, well, what other way would he do it where anyone would even pay attention to him, where anyone would even and no one's perfect, so maybe there is a better way he could have went about doing it. But I think he got everyone's attention. He stated why he didn't want to stand for the flag and all that. And I thought that's his choice. That's the country that we live in. We have a freedom to do that. I just think that sometimes, in order to get someone's attention, you got to do some extreme stuff, and it could be a dangerous price to pay, like someone like Martin Luther King or someone like that. But it's like, how the hell else are you going to get anyone's attention unless you're, kind of like stirring some shit up a little bit. Like you have to do something sometimes drastic to get the attention of the people.
Yeah, man. I think one thing that Daniel said, and I think you noticed me laughing when he was talking about the Keto Pet Sanctuary and the insulting foods that dogs were eating. I don't know, is that where you started saying that from, or is that just something that whole crowd kind of says in terms of
I got it.
Foods?
I got it from him. He says a lot of great stuff. The other thing that he says quite often is, and this is a great thing for anybody listening to this. This is a great maneuver in your life to utilize. A lot of times he starts out a sentence by saying you're not wrong, and then he tells you why you're wrong, kind of. But like he'll say like you're not wrong, as if like you're on the right track. You know, he's also very complimentary. Like he complimented Andrew a couple times. It's very like he's very nice. You know, so he kind of like he has a great ability to win you over. I almost feel like he would be an amazing like politician or something. And even as he was like talking to us, I felt like he was like teaching a class in some way. But yeah, I love that idea of, or that, you know, the thing that he says is, you know, it works pretty good on the wifey. I can say, oh, you're not wrong. You know, and I can say like, hey, how I feel about something, even though I totally kind of tricked her into, you know, seeing something my way without her knowing.
It's sort of like giving out a participation trophy. Like, hey, good job, but, you know, you're not really there yet. He's the best.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yep. That was good.
He's got to be upset. You know, he normally trains with Michael Hearn. He's normally in those early morning training sessions. So I'm sure, you know, just like everybody else, you know, feeling the effects of being on lockdown. But I do think that the country's going to be open back up by the end of the month, even if it's not necessarily the quote unquote right thing to do, because I just don't think that anyone can stand it any longer.
Yeah. And the thing about testing, I know I've heard before why we're so behind, but other countries have more tests and more reliable tests. I guess I'm just kind of surprised that we still haven't gotten there yet. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and I personally haven't investigated or looked at it at all. I did see something yesterday. They talked about the University of Stanford having some pretty reliable testing. And then I also heard it was like, you know, $200 or something like that. So I don't think the problem is necessarily testing. I think the problem is having affordable testing. I think if you wanted to, I think if you spent maybe the next 2 hours on the internet, you could probably find whatever you want. It's just a matter of like, you know, what kind of dollar amount are you going to associate to it? And then also trying to vet that information and trying to figure out, what is a reliable source, you know, for, you know, getting these tests done. And then also like, what do you do with the information? That would be, you know, if I'm going to order a testing kit, which I probably will try to figure out how to do that. The thing that you have to think about before you even get the test is what would you do with the information? You know, like what, you know, if I test my family and only Quinn has it, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle that? You know? So I think that trying to prep yourself mentally for, that this one person might be in isolation, you know, and all of you have to stay away from them or whatever the case may be. I mean, it's definitely for the better and it's definitely the right move. But yeah, what a weird thing to have to practice, right?
Yeah. In those situations, like even like, because I've thought about that too. At this point, I really wouldn't do anything different. Like, I mean, there's certain people that I'm typically around. If I've been around them, they probably have it, and like there's nothing else to really do in this situation, you know. But using South Korea as a comparison and what Daniel was talking about, it just makes so much more sense. Like that is the next step for us being able to move out of this. We need reliable testing that the mass population can get. And then we need to figure out, okay, if you've got it, are you old and are you immunocompromised? Okay, maybe you need to be quarantined or that's when you know what to do. But this mass quarantine where all these businesses are shut down and we're not able to do much, it's not the solution.
Yeah, and then what he was saying about the tests going from labs to whatever big word, where he didn't say that they were assuming that they have the coronavirus, but they just weren't doing the thorough testing to make sure that they have.
Oh yeah, he was talking about a lab versus clinical.
Clinical, there it is. Sorry,
clinical being like just an examination. Like, yeah, I think you got it.
You have all the symptoms. Yeah, that's really eye opening and would make a ton of sense of why this thing is like tripling or whatever, every other day or whatever it may be. It's because like, well, the barrier of entry just got, the bar was just taken down a notch, so that way they can, I know it's because they say they have lack of testing, as far as like kits and whatnot, but man, I think that's a huge mistake to just be like, yeah, you have it.
Not even saying that is true, but, anecdotally, Dr. Buttar did say that he's gotten messages from doctors saying how the death certificates were changed from X to COVID-19. Again, not saying it's true, but in the context of what we're speaking about right now, it's not too far-fetched to believe that that might be happening on a larger scale.
I think we might need to have some conversation too with Daniel in another podcast, basically just talking to him about like how does he research stuff? I think that might be really valuable, because this guy is not just going on Google, I don't think, but I could be wrong. But like he's a super intelligent. Maybe he could even help us in terms of some good content for like personal development. Like I just sat here with a notepad. I haven't written anything down for a podcast in a while, but I knew that class was in session with Mr. Orrego coming on board for today. Yeah. But what he said about when he said about the Keto Pet Sanctuary and how he was able to kind of, win those people over or give them perspective. And he talks about being open, being inclusive, and being transparent. I just thought, I was like, man, this guy's giving out gold over here. Like, he's giving out some really, really good information. And it's like, how could you use that? Well, you could use that for anything. You could use, again, like just thinking back to diet. Anytime you want to bring a diet into your household, sometimes it's a thing with your significant other or with your family. And then you can be open, you can be exclusive, you can be transparent, and you can say, well, here's what the diet looks like. Here's the foods that I'm choosing to eat. Here's why I'm doing it. You can join in with me. Here's a workout that I'm going to do for today. I'm going on these 10-minute walks. Like, I ask my son every time if he wants to go on a walk with me, and he goes on a walk with me probably once every other day, and I go on, probably in the course of 2 days, probably go on 6 or 7 walks, especially now because there ain't shit to do. But yeah, just being inclusive and being transparent and being open and letting people know what you're doing, when you're doing it, and maybe they'll join in with you.
Yeah. No.
What you guys got for workouts and stuff? You guys lifting? Exercising?
Kettlebell work. Going to do some kettlebell work today. It's raining, but I think that might be more fun. So yeah, the kettlebell's super fun. I can't wait to get to it. So it's going to be exciting.
Mm-hmm. What you going to do?
Me? I'm just going to create a circuit. I'm going to see if my homie that I was doing it with the other day wants to join in, and I'm just going to create a circuit like we did the other day. But I think I'm going to make it a little bit harder and work through some different types of movements. So, yeah. You
going to ride your bike down to a street and see if he can come out and play?
That dude, like, he actually lives literally around the block. His house is around the block. We live really close to each other. So, it's really funny because he has asthma. So he's had asthma for like since he was a kid. So like, he's like, nah, man, I can't come over to see you. You can't come over to see me. We got to hang out outside. Cause he's like, he's trying to be very careful. So we'll like walk and talk outside and like do this kettlebell type of stuff, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm just going to hit up a indoor hike today on the treadmill, just a steep incline walk and then maybe a walk run. We'll see. But that's all I have on the docket for today. It's tons of fun on the NordiTrack treadmill that I have, because like the coach walks you through it and tells you when to go fast, when to slow down, when to go uphill, when to go on a decline, all that good
Andrew,
stuff.
you gotta get yourself one of these beach houses.
I know. Well, I know.
Instead of the Nordic, throw away the NordiTrack.
Is the house that's like 2 or 3 houses down?
Look, it's not even raining out anymore. It's getting nice.
There was a house like 2-3 houses down. The one
beautiful
with that golf cart, it was for sale. I don't know if it's still for sale, but I might have to cop that one.
There's houses for sale all the time here. I think people eventually get too old and just keel over,
Oh, God.
Actually, I don't know why someone would move from here other than that, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. We love it out there.
Yesterday, I went to do a workout, and I was going to do like 21, 15, 9, and I just did 21, 21, 21. I just kept doing 21. I like forgot to drop the other reps off, but I got in a lot of squats and push-ups and jumping jacks. Felt really good.
Yeah. I think people, like even myself, you underestimate what you can do with very minimal equipment or no equipment. Like we don't need a gym. I think you mentioned something about this. I don't know if it was in your live video or in your story, how we're going to kind of realize how irrelevant a gym is. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the gym doesn't matter or that it's not necessary, but the past, whatever amount of time that I've been having a workout at home and maybe just use a kettlebell, I've had amazing workouts. I've been feeling really good. I honestly, even though I can't even do jujitsu right now, which I thought about in the past, I'm like, what would I do without jujitsu? I'm good. Like, I'm good. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, let the body heal, let the body recover, let your brain recover from it all and stuff, and just use it as some downtime, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nsima, have you tried to like add any like dumbbells or anything to your home gym?
No, I literally am just using the kettlebell, and I'm just doing a lot of different movements with that. Like I told you guys, I've been working on my handstands and doing different exercises to be able to do handstand walks, and I've been having great workouts. And the big thing for me is what exercise gives me is a feeling like my mind becomes at ease. Like I'm not as irritable. I just feel I feel good. And like I went on a hike yesterday. I felt great just by going on that hike and moving. I felt just like when I typically work out every day, the thing that I'd like to do. So I don't need a gym, but it's great to have when it's there.
Yeah. No, I ask because, man, I've been looking online because like I just want to add like some 45s or even 35s. Mm-hmm. Dumbbells are sold out everywhere.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like with one kettlebell, I can do all the bicep curls, tricep extensions, overhead pressing, squatting that I need to do. I just do way more reps.
Yeah. No, I mean, last Sunday, I did a full just home chest workout, not thinking too much of it. I'm just like, oh, it's Sundays. We usually bench. So I'm just going to do like try to get a chest, pump or whatever. Man, I was sore for a couple days. Like I was doing decline push-ups and dude, it was bad. I was surprised. So I'm like, all right, this is cool. I don't have any, well, obviously I don't have any excuses, but like I have no reason to be like upset that we can't go to super training right now. Like it's still all fun.
Some stuff gets a little hard to figure out, like maybe like trying to work like your biceps or something. But if you have like a pull-up bar, that covers you pretty good. That gets your back, that gets the back of your shoulders, that gets your biceps a ton. Mm-hmm. And then also just like holding on to stuff. So if you can just find anything that has any sort of weight to it and kind of walk with it, or maybe even hold something in a curl position. I mean, you could literally kind of pick up just about anything. I know it's not the same, it's just not the same thing, but if you have like water jugs at your house or something like that, you kind of do a little bit of a curl with them as you walk for, 20 feet or something like that. I'll give you a little bit of a workout,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely nice. I think, there's a little bit of shift going on, obviously in the way we're working out, but also in the way that we're viewing how specific workouts need to be. Like in the gym, you're like, oh God, I got to do this sets and reps of this and this, I need this cable movement and this, but like you start to realize you can do so much with so little. Mm-hmm.
And, if you
do a burpee, you're working your whole damn body. They kill.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have been in the gym when Andrew Sullivan has been working out, but the guy's an animal. He goes hard. I checked out his Instagram and he's doing some insane, like he's like, I gotta simulate a cable curl with a rope. So he has like, I don't know, like a bunch of 45s and then like a towel through it, and he's just like swinging it between his legs doing curls, and like, dude, he's still being a madman at home. It's like, it's really cool because I'm pretty sure he never even thought of doing something like that. And there he is like doing his cable curls.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to be resourceful, I'm sure there's probably a lot of books on this topic. And I know there's a lot of like home workout stuff being done, but like there's a guy named Bud Jeffries who had a book years ago called Twisted Conditioning. this guy was a fucking madman. Like, he's still around. He still puts out some workouts and stuff. Lives down in the San Diego area. Our guy Jeff that was working for us actually knew him pretty well. But Bud Jeffries was a natural lifter. He's a big guy. He does like jiu-jitsu and martial arts and different things like that. But that guy will go out in his backyard and just pick up these giant fucking barrels. So people are like looking for like weights and stuff. But if you really wanted to, you can go to like a scrapyard right now and you can get shit. You could get like, you can get a barrel and fucking lift a barrel over your head. This guy would do all kinds of cool stuff, but he would do tons and tons of like squats and push-ups. I remember he'd have these workouts where he would do, like, his warm-up was to do like 1,000 body weight squats. And this is a big boy. This is a big guy. He's probably over 300 pounds. That was his warm-up. He would do 1,000 squats, and then he had like a rack in his backyard, and he would like, lift, he had some weights and stuff like that too. He'd squat like 900 pounds. You were like, what the? The guy's conditioning was through the roof. But yeah, there's a lot of books like that. There's a lot of information where, if you're resourceful, you can, you can push your car, you can push your truck, like whatever you got, man, figure it out.
Oh man, I just remembered this. Okay. Let's not forget where we are right now. But, you remember when Daniel was talking about the patents, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the last podcast, we did that quick Google search and we saw USA Today says Bill Gates doesn't own the patent. But even Daniel, when you look into it, he's kind of like,
yeah, he sort of does.
Yeah, he sort of does. So like when he said that, I was just like, you guys see what we're talking about here? Like, you can't just look at an article from USA Today and think that's totally right. Bill Gates, in a way, does own that patent. And it's just like that's why we're doing this here. Like, that's why this is important.
Yep.
Great point.
All right, peeps. Want to take us on out of here, Andrew?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for checking out this episode, hopefully with a unbiased opinion of everything that we've been doing over the past couple of days. If you guys want to reach out and let us know how you feel about this episode, please follow us on Instagram at Mark Bell's Power Project, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. Whoa. Oh my gosh, Mark.
You're doing some RPR there?
Yeah. Oh, that's a different RPR. That's gonna. That's some good readiness there. Yeah. My Instagram is.
I'm not even getting paid for this.
Oh, not yet. This is the free demo. Then you're gonna have your pay site up very soon.
Everybody in.
Yeah.
My OnlyFans.
That's where was I? I'm at I am Andrew Z on Instagram. Any links or anything we talk about on this episode, especially Piedmontese, please check the podcast show notes and the YouTube description for all of that. Nsima, where are you at?
At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, at Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Real quick, we helped a woman have an easier baby.
That's right.
Like, she had a better delivery by doing the squats we've been talking about. Wow.
That's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, man. I was like, wow, that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, man. I've been on it. I don't know if I hit them up every day, but I have been doing them very religiously. Been hitting up those 10-minute squats. Did a bunch of squats and push-ups and jumping jacks yesterday. And then when I was done with it, I was just like, I'm just going to sit down here in the bottom of the squat for a while. So I've been doing it pretty frequently. I'm noticing an improvement. So it took a while. I've probably been doing it for maybe it didn't take that long. Maybe it's 15, 16 days or so. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I don't think I've done it every single day, but almost. And yeah, I'm starting to notice it's a lot of stretching for my lower back, which I didn't even realize. I didn't know that I didn't know what the issue was. I didn't know it was so overly tight on me. I thought it was more like just like my groin, but it's my lower back. That's really, really like, if you ever seen me lift, if you ever see me pull like a heavy deadlift, my back doesn't possess the ability to like round. If I can round anything, I can round my upper back.
Yeah. But
my back has gotten so stiff from all the lifting over the years that it won't, the lower part won't round over, even with, tons of weight. Mm-hmm. So that is starting to kind of like unravel a little bit, which feels good. It's starting to kind of round the way that it's supposed to be able to round. It's not supposed to be fused together the way that mine is at the moment. So, it's been working. I've been able to get my hips a little bit lower, and then I've also been able to kind of push my knees forward a little bit more and force the knees out a little bit. But it's crazy how.
Oh no.
For too long. Oh, maybe I was talking for too long there.
I don't know what just happened.
That was pretty cool. Is Natty Professor still here?
There he is.
Did I disappear?
We all disappeared.
The last thing I heard is "it's crazy how," and then
same here.
Okay.
Anyway,
we're on the government's radar now.
Yeah. Anyway, the sun is out. That's looking really cool. Anyway, the squats are feeling really, really good. And I just encourage you guys to stay on it, stay on some walks, try to encourage some family members to hit up a walk. And please go over to markbellslingshot.com, pick up a hip circle, pick up a slingshot push-up or a slingshot to get in your home workouts. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you all later.